Humiliation today for Anthony Albanese and a disaster for Australia. Humiliation for a Prime Minister who has no personal connection with US President Donald Trump, who's rejected Trump's demands for more defence spending, and, big surprise, now gets treated like dirt. Albanese's meeting tomorrow with Trump at the G7 meeting in Canada has been cancelled with zero warning. Just the post from Trump's White House spokesman. That because of the war in the Middle East, Trump was flying back to Washington after today's official G7 dinner, to which Albanese was not invited.
You probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can and have dinner with these wonderful leaders, and then I get on the plane. I have to be back early for obvious.
Now, true, Trump does have a war on his hands, and going home so fast suggests that war could get much worse very fast, much worse for Iran. And bear in mind that, unlike Trump, Albanese has refused to back this war to destroy Iran's nuclear program, which might be another reason for Trump not to care what Albanese thinks. Now, Albanese did put out a statement saying Trump rushing back to Washington was, of course, understandable. But as Liberal frontbencher Dave Sharma, a former ambassador to Israel, put it, this is an abject failure of Australian diplomacy. Albanese has not even managed to meet President Trump. But more importantly, this cancellation could be a disaster for Australia, because it leaves us in even more danger of losing our submarine fleet just when the threat from China makes that absolutely critical that we don't. Albanese was counting on his first meeting with Trump to raise two issues in particular: Trump's new tariffs on our exports, to ask Trump to give us a break, but most important was to ask Trump to respect the AUKUS deal between Australia, America and Britain and sell us 3 of its nuclear submarines to replace our very old diesel ones. Without those American subs, we could have nothing fit to use in the next decade to protect our sea lanes just when China is threatening war. Now, the reason America might now back out is that it also feels threatened by China, which now has 400 naval ships to America's 293. And the one thing giving America the edge there are submarines. But it's not building enough of them to replace its old ones. And there's now a review in the US by the Undersecretary of Defence for Policy to see whether it can even afford to sell Australia's submarines it may need itself. Now, Albanese has so far pretended this is all just a tick-in-the-box exercise that you would expect from a new government, and earlier today claimed that this exchange at the G7 between Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer suggests these submarines, our submarine sales, this part of the AUKUS deal, that's going to sail through.
Yeah, we're proceeding with that. It's a really important deal to both of us. I think the President is doing a review. We did a review when we came into government, so that makes good sense to me. But it's a really important...
We're very long-time partners and allies and friends, and we've become friends in a short period of time.
In fact, as you heard, Trump was making no commitments, but a wink is as good as a nod to a desperate Prime Minister.
I'm confident that all 3 nations will continue to provide support for it. The sum of 1 + 1 + 1 sometimes equals more than 3, and it certainly does that in this case.
But let me now show you something that's not been reported in Australia. And it shows that our submarine deal with the US is in real trouble. America's Secretary for the Navy is John Phelan. He's a big fan of AUKUS, but even he now fears that America may not have enough submarines to spare 3 of them for Australia. He last week gave this evidence to the US Armed Services Committee that the US Navy shipbuilding plans were a shambles and Australia could pay.
All of our programs are a mess. To be honest. We are behind schedule and over budget. I think our best performing one is 6 months late and 57% over budget. Submarines are our critical asymmetric advantage, and obviously Australia and the United Kingdom are our closest allies, and in particularly in the undersea domain. My immediate concern as Secretary of the Navy is to improve our submarine production rate and our maintenance throughput so that we can make sure that we are meeting all of our commitments, our internal commitments, and then any future AUKUS commitments. But I need to do that without making sure we're sacrificing any combat capability for the combatant commanders that we need in the Western Pacific.
And now Albanese still can't get a meeting with Trump to persuade him to sell us those subs. In fact, Trump is landing home right now while Albanese is still stuck in Canada, as you can see. It seems that Albanese still doesn't count enough for Trump to squeeze in a meeting, and the longer all this goes, Albanese goes on backstabbing Israel, rejecting American demands to spend even more on our defence, the more Albanese looks like an unreliable friend who can't be trusted with American submarines anyway. Now, sure, most experts say it should all come good in the end. We'll get those subs. But if it doesn't come good, if we're kept in the cold like Albanese now, way up there in Canada, we're in huge trouble.